What's going on, guys? So the other day I got a question from a fellow colleague in the sports nutrition world, and he asked a question that I think a lot of people have probably pondered over their career, and this was surrounding pre-workout pricing and why does it seem like all pre-workouts are priced around the $35 mark. And he kind of went on to say, is this some type of secret number that he's not aware of? Is there something going on? And I'm going to kind of tackle this question in this video, but before I kind of get started on that, I would love if you guys support me by hitting the thumbs up button right down below. So big thanks to that if you guys did do that. But let's dive into the answer to this question. It makes sense to kind of go back one step and explain kind of Keystone pricing or just kind of a basic pricing model that most consumer packaged goods companies go through. And this essentially, if we're using the example of a pre-workout, if a pre-workout costs a brand $9 to contract manufacturer, they basically double that price when they offer it to a wholesaler, so $18. And from the wholesaler to ultimately the end consumer, that price again doubles from $18 to $36. That's all well and good, but why does it seem like all pre-workouts are priced around this $35? In this particular product category, in this particular industry, I think it's important for us to note that most of the Keystone pricing that I kind of just walked through is kind of similar across a bunch of different brands because everybody's kind of selecting from the same bucket of ingredients. They're working with the same contract manufacturers, the same packaging elements. Though the cost to manufacture a pre-workout might vary a few dollars here and there, the Keystone pricing ultimately rolls up to around the same number. But there's another kind of concept that kind of goes in line with this, and this is kind of the idea of like, this is just how it's always been, this copycat or kind of follow the leader mentality that happens in sports nutrition. And there's a technical pricing term for this. I'm not just throwing everybody under the bus. This is actually called competitive pricing, and it's actually kind of the most common in kind of the consumer packaged goods world. If I kind of explain this competitive pricing model, essentially, you have to have two competitors in the market, and these two competitors have to basically be in the same product category in a pretty similar product composition. And essentially, the second competitor that goes in the market will price the product at or around the same number and basically try to compete against that original product with kind of product claims or kind of telling a story about how that product is better. This is very common in kind of sports nutrition categories, especially functional CPG categories, because most brands, I use brands loosely here, most of the competitors in the market are actually like product companies, not brands. They do use a lot of product marketing over just kind of brand marketing. Why is competitive pricing so commonly used? It comes down to it's very simple to do. You're obviously just pegging your product to a competitor's product, a leading competitor's product. It has low risk because you're not really taking a chance on either some premium pricing or some economy pricing and kind of cutting your margins very thin. And quite honestly, it's very effective. It's useful to price your product close to other competitors because it's within the natural buying behavior of consumers in that category already. You're not kind of bucking a trend that's already kind of happening in the market. That all sounds like great, awesome. Why you can obviously understand why so many brands use competitive pricing. But there's a flip side to that, there's a bad side to that, and in the sports nutrition and pre-workout world, you're kind of seeing some of this start to happen now. Competitive pricing kind of creates this set it and forget it mentality with brands, and this is definitely not a strategy you should roll out with pricing. Pricing should be a fluid process that happens when you're getting data in the market. You have an understanding of like where your product is in its life cycle, maybe even your brand's life cycle. And you're also, if you're making improvements or differentiations in your product, you're taking those into account. But what happens more often than not, especially in kind of the pre-workout world, is that you have this set it and forget it mentality. The product gets stale. Because the product gets stale, and that pre-workouts are a very fickle kind of market or a very fickle category within sports nutrition, people are always trying something new. So if your product is getting stale, you kind of have a less demand that's happening with that product, and because your demand of your product's going lower and you have bills to pay, you have dust that's collecting on your money and your inventory, you tend to start this what they call race to the bottom. Though like price manipulations, sales discounts, all those things can help demand in the short term, maintaining like a lower price point is usually not very good in the market long term. And this like race to the bottom is also kind of sped up in particularly pre-workouts and sports nutrition because it's a very low barrier of entry industry, and pre-workouts are extremely popular category within an industry that's very low barriers of entry. So you tend to have a lot of people entering the market. You have a lot of people that maybe aren't the best at business planning and all the kind of attributes of traditional kind of business. They buy up a lot of supply, they flood the market, they realize that they can't sell it because they don't have the right branding, marketing, product, whatever in to compete in the market. And what ends up happening is that oversupply kind of messes with the supply demand curves, market economics or price economics, and essentially drives pricing down. And because your product is also in this kind of stale state, or you're kind of set it and forget it type of mentality, and you're just trying to keep demand at a certain level, that just exacerbates the race to the bottom, and it ultimately hurts you even worse. The person that asked this question, I know what they were trying to get to in terms of not so much around like negative effects in the market. This person that asked is very well educated in terms of what's happening in the market, but they were kind of leaning towards the idea of like, can the pre-workout category and the sports nutrition market support premium priced brands, and why are we not seeing a lot of premium priced brands in the market long term? And I think this comes down to like a fancy business term around like elasticity of demand. And the elasticity of demand kind of is around like you look at this through kind of three attributes within the product. So one of them is around like necessity. Is there an element of necessity that goes on with pre-workouts? And though most of us that take pre-workouts know that it might feel like it's a necessity, it's really just a want, it's not a need. Another element that you have to consider around like time constraints, and most, especially pre-workouts, most of them are not like a fast-moving consumer good, something that's a constant input within our lives that we have to constantly kind of replenish, that a spike in a price up or down will not really affect our buying. If we do see big price fluctuations, we tend to notice those things, because if you're buying a 30 serving pre-workout once a month, you're buying this product, when something is changing prices, and there's not this element of like a time constraint that goes around with this. You can kind of plan ahead and buy a different product if you'd like. If we're kind of moving pre-workouts into like performance, ready to drinks, I think you have a little bit more of an argument on that kind of attribute. But the biggest kind of attribute of why you're not seeing like premium pricing in the pre-workout or sports nutrition category is this kind of this attribute of like substitution. There's a ton of availability of substitutions in the market, and I'm not saying that if you go on Amazon and you search that there's 5,000 pre-workouts, I think plus at this point, I'm not saying that product X and product Y are perfect substitutions, but what I'm saying is that for a common consumer or consumer on any level, there's a variance between what they consider substitutions, especially in pre-workout. There's a ton of variance in terms of what they believe is a good pre-workout or a bad pre-workout, because there's an element of like sensory ingredients that are kind of put into that, the niacins, the beta-alanines, the caffeines, or other kind of stimulants. And then you have the element of kind of like performance ergogenic aid type of product or ingredients, which have kind of cumulative effects, or maybe not the instant gratification of a sensory ingredient, but it does have, probably arguably more benefits long term. But on what spectrum is that consumer considering sensory over performance and all these different elements? So what you see is that, if a pre-workout or a brand is wanting to come out with a very premium price product, and that's not, easily translated into the market, when they do have a price that's so much higher, there's a kind of a spike in demand for the substitutions that are lower priced, because a consumer is kind of pegged to this $30, $35, $40 mark that they're used to paying for, a pre-workout. And I know I touched on kind of like perfect competition and though there are elements of perfect competition in the market or perfect substitution or what they kind of call like the commoditization of a category, I think there's elements of that happening in the market now, but I don't think we're in the next 2 to 3 years getting to that point, uh, unless some things happen, some outside external factors that happen. And then also like with supporting a premium price, there's some elements that kind of go counter to what is happening in kind of the sports nutrition and pre-workout categories. First of all, like I touched on this a little bit, like uniqueness or like a proprietary factor to it. Most of the category, sports nutrition in general, and just nutritional supplements are going to transparent labels, clean labels. So there's not a lot of hiding behind, this secret sauce, this proprietariness of products that you used to have maybe a decade ago. And there's also this element of like, what is premium? Is it sensory? Is it performance? Is it a combination of both? What is the best combination? Like, what is the consumer actually saying? At this point, the best selling pre-workout is Cellucor C4. And, for a advanced user, they might be like, this is not the product for me. This is not what I'm looking for. But for a common consumer, the vast majority of the buyers in the market, it's a very effective pre-workout for them because they're comparing C4 to maybe just, a cup of coffee or maybe a Diet Coke or maybe even like a Gatorade. And then secondly, I kind of touched on this again earlier, like a lot of sports nutrition companies are not kind of building brands, they're building products. They're not really focused on a bigger idea of brand building, brand marketing, figuring out like where a consumer would want your brand to fit into their life, like why would they want to purchase that product, what is the emotion that they get with that product that would reinforce them buying a product that maybe is $5 or $10 more. The one that's getting the closest to this is Ghost Lifestyle. I don't want to get into a conversation about which is better formula wise or not, but a $45 pre-workout is priced at a premium level comparable to a C4 maybe that's at $30 or $35. And then also you see like this miss on consistency with pricing strategy, with like price integrity, with kind of keeping this premium price level over time. Sports nutrition is, again, a lot of those elements that I talked about earlier about having low barriers of entry and just kind of having this set it and forget it type of strategy of competitive pricing. All these kind of things work counter to having a long-term kind of premium pricing that is consistent over time across all channels, all those things. Because what you see more than not in this industry is you see a lot of those price manipulations. Things like I was saying about trying to get penetration in the market, trying to get mind share, get market share. What's going to grab people's attention are these, sale type things. And that is not going to work well when you're trying to price a product at a premium level. And I think it's also important to kind of consider there's some other elements that go into pricing that maybe can manipulate the market into not kind of having some of these premium level pricing. We have this idea of like demand pricing where sports nutrition brand will give different pricing based on their buying power. So if you are working with a massive distributor or maybe a mass retailer, you give them a lower price. And if your product's not selling, there's an oversupply in the market. Eventually the downward pressure on pricing happens. So more times than not, there's downward pressure that seems to be happening, and there's not the uniqueness and the brand and everything that's justifying somebody to create like a premium pricing level. And then finally, like more of a macro driver to kind of pricing going down or staying at this level, regardless of maybe costs going up, costs of or customer acquisition costs going up, different layers of costs going up within the sports nutrition world. You have kind of this food, drug, mass convenience channel getting more built out on products. You have them demanding, doing some of this demand pricing, driving pricing down, having pre-workouts priced at $25, $20. You have Amazon coming in and flooding the market with a lot of their private labels, their accelerator program. You're seeing pre-workouts again at $20, $25. So you're seeing the idea of a premium priced product be getting more and more washed out and having less and less of a chance in the market. Now, I'm not saying that there's not a chance in the market for premium priced pre-workouts. I think it just all of the elements have not come together in a winning combination. But I think I'll end this topic here. Hopefully I answered this question for you guys. Hopefully you guys got an answer around like, why does it seem like pre-workouts are priced around this $35 mark? If you guys got some value out of this video, I would love if you guys would hit that thumbs up button. Also subscribe to this channel. That would be much appreciated. I want to thank you guys for giving me a little bit of time of your day. Hopefully I gave you guys value in return for that time, and I'll see you guys on the next one.